Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Cameron DeYoung, and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager at EMDs, and I'll be your moderator for today's presentation. In today's Practice Partner Lunch and Learn, we're going to discuss installation and migration steps with Practice Partner 11.2. We'll get to the presentation in just a moment, but I wanted to quickly go over a few housekeeping items. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be made available to everyone after the event. You'll receive an email with a link to the presentation slides as well as instructions on how to access the recording. All attendee lines are in listen-only mode. If you have a question during the presentation, you can use the Q&A and chat tools to submit them to the team. Time permitting, we will handle all questions at the end of the presentation. If we're not able to get to your questions during the live session, we will make sure to follow up with you directly after the webinar. On your screen, you should be able to see the slides for today's Lunch and Learn. To view a full screen mode of the slides, please click the arrow icon in the top right-hand corner of the presentation screen, and that will maximize your view of the presentation. That's all I have for housekeeping. I'm going to hand it over to Susie, Dave, and Bob to get us started. Susie, thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining. Let's go ahead and get started. We wanted to talk about the installation and migration in there. We've kind of got over it on other Lunch and Learns. But again, we want to emphasize the importance of it. And then I've got Dave and Bob on here to join with me, as the three of us have been working through installation on the beta sites and troubleshooting all this. So those guys will kind of walk you through on the installation and migration process through this slides. Just going to take a minute to plug our user conference coming up on June 20th through the 22nd, 2019. It will be in Austin this year. Dave and I will both be there, so we would love to see your faces and join us there for a lot of education and networking. So Practice Partner version 11.2 is now entitling customers, meaning that it's available upon request. Over the next several weeks, we're going to be entitling customers to this release on a per request basis with the plan to entitle all customers within the next couple of coming months. And the purpose on that is that it's more of a controlled release, enabling everybody to get up on it and get the assistance and help that they need to be able to do that. So customers looking to report the macro MIPS will need to be on this release for reporting in 2019. CPC Plus clients need to get on it as sooner than later at this point to be able to do it. So there again, it's now released on there. And what you're going to want to do is to inquire about the entitlement, you go ahead and create a case in the support center and this update is going to be currently, released by request information. So if it's something that you're going to get on it sooner than later, make sure you get your release in there so we can get you on the docket to start moving forward on that. So a lot of the preparation we've been doing coming to this point has been talking about what has to be done on this, the changes in this, information on that, and it's so important. Dave and Bob will also probably stress on this as well, is the preparation of being ready for this upgrade. If you guys were around when we released 11.0, there was a lot of changes in there and a lot of frustration, and a lot of it may have boiled back to not really being prepared or just going to go ahead and update, and on Friday night and Monday morning, everybody's going to come to work and be chipper as always. With this version, it's the enterprise module replaces the e-prescribing module that we've all known for a long time. And so there's a lot of workflow changes on that. It's a whole different process. And so it's really important that taking all the information we have, we've got more information in here. We have your documentation, your pick list, checklist, all that kind of information is already out there on the support site for you to start preparing with the documentation and being able to start getting ready to do it. And I cannot stress enough too is to make sure that on your site that everybody involved is involved. A lot of times we do upgrades more on the IT side of it or the analyst side of it. We kind of get things done. But this enterprise really affects your providers, and it's going to affect them mostly more than anyone. So it's very important that they're in queue with this upgrade. They understand what's coming onto it, and we'll be talking about ongoing sessions. I know the next Lunch and Learn is going to be about UpDocs because that's another step of moving into 2019. And then the following one, I will do like workflow enterprises and things that I've learned just by doing the beta testing and that kind of stuff to get that out to you as well. So the idea is to make sure that everybody gets as much education as they can on it. So when that does get installed, if I put it this way, is if everybody's prepared for it, then it's a lot less stressful than when they're not. So why move to 11.2? Well, like I just said, it's the Practice Partner 2015 certification. The ONC reporting MIPS macro requires this for 2019. The new script guidelines mandate for providers doing e-prescribing on the NCPDP script version 2017-01. It's going to be addressed, and even though we're getting our 11.2 out now, you're going to see more stages of this coming out because of the mandated requirements that will be there by 2020. And so there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind it, but this is why not only above the 2015 certification, what we are moving in that direction. It will improve e-prescribing, medication allergy formulary management from what we've known, as well as the best part of it is there's no more formulary downloads, drug interaction updates, and pharmacy downloads. So probably save about 500 plus gigabytes of space once you get moving into the enterprise on 11.2. So there again, that's a good side information, but there's the way we've known life as we've known it for a long time is changing. And then again, this is standardized across all EMD platforms. So the enterprise product is going to be used in all of our platforms in the e-prescribing modules as they come, as we start releasing them. We're going to go through the migration steps, Dave and Bob are, and then I'll talk about some admin things that need to be done. But it's going to include all patches pre-migration, complete preparation, and checklist from which will be included in the new utility to reconcile practice and providers to talk about that. Migrate to enterprise.exe and set up patches and migration, which brings on the enterprise actual module, as well as 33 table upgrades. Enterprise keys and the external systems, which is how the enterprise is going to interact into Practice Partner through those external systems. Registered with enterprise.exe and log in to run the pharmacy downloads. So they're, again, migration over to it. Your existing pharmacies in Practice Partner will come in to the new system and then be associated with pharmacy management into Partner. And then last, we do have some new Practice Partner upgrade services for 11.2, which include technical support and training consultants, kind of similar to what we did when we had 11.0 when we released that. So I'll just kind of plug that towards the end of the information that goes on. So overall, the goal for now is to get up on 11.2. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to my buddies Dave and Bob, and they're going to talk about the changes and then that whole process to go through, that you're going to go through as far as getting this installed. All right, guys, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Susie. Can you hear me? I want to
yes.
Make sure. Okay, just want to make sure it's not muted. Okay, wonderful. Well, hello to everybody. Bob and I will take you through this. I'm going to move rather quickly. Just remember all the items you'll have access to. You'll be able to go through this flow. The documentation is quite, well, we've refined the documentation. Our goal is to make it to where you could safely go through everything. I don't know if I should have said safely, but you could logically go through everything, and it would be on the intuitive side. So that's what we have strived for, because our goal really is, the bottom line is to make all of you successful in this and to help you get to this new 11.2 version, which is needed and required for government mandates. Okay, let's all applaud that. All right. So we'll talk about new patching utility, the pre-installed tasks, upgrading to 11.2 and enterprise migration, admin tasks, new functionality. And one of the big things is in the 33 table upgrades is this increased character limits for the name fields for the first, last, and middle name. Now supports at least 35 characters, right? So if somebody's got a middle name that's very creative, we'll support up to 35 characters of that, okay? So next slide. All right, double click there. So there is a separate version for anybody, and I'm not sure if anybody on this call is in this position, but maybe a billing service or somebody that's just using the appointment scheduler, okay? There is a separate utility, this EXE, Enable version 11.2, and that's only for those sites, right? So if you have practice partner patient records along with those others, you know, whether you have those other components or not, you need to use the other utility. I'm just pointing this out. I hope there's no confusion. And also at the bottom on the test system, that utility will be used only to test, but you won't have the ability to go to the enterprise. Okay, and we'll be talking about that later. Those are the only options for this Enable version. Okay, it doesn't do any of the migration steps. Okay, I hope that's clear. And you know, I think Susie's monitoring, and I'll be monitoring if there's any questions on that. But if you're not one of those facilities that's got only billing or only billing and scheduler or only scheduler, then you would not use this, right? And the book should be clear, the guides, okay? But I just wanted to spend a little time pointing that out. So here's what you would be following, right? Down at the bottom, it says, do not follow the step that says new patching system. That would be for that billing only or scheduler sites, okay? Hopefully not too confusing. So here we go through the process, but this will, you know, these are the simple tasks. The pre-installation tasks are going to be your best friend. If you do your homework, and it's not a lot, you know, it's making sure SPIs are right, make sure addresses are correct for the providers and the practice. If those things are correct, and in this version, SureScripts is going to enforce that you can only have one SPI per practice per provider. So if a provider is practicing in multiple practices, multiple addresses at your site, they need a secondary SPI. And you'll be able to enroll for that free of charge once you do the migration. So these checklists are really important. You want to, at the bottom here, make sure that you watch the Engage videos and webinars that all of you are on today on Enterprise RX. We're trying to give you as many tools as possible, right? Next, yeah, okay.
I'll move on for you, Dave.
Yeah, well, I got the click, but sometimes I don't. It's like very exacting there. So, review of practice part, but I appreciate that, Susie. Okay. You want to make sure you review all the practice partner documentation. We have a new 11.2 documentation page that's really clean and streamlined. So if it's something you don't need, it hasn't been migrated over to that 11.2 page. So yeah, the 11.0 through 1 page is very busy. So, you know, hopefully you have a chance to reach out and look at those documents. The internet security additions are important. You have to add these 2 lines. And then lastly, WebView, you must, if you're on WebView, you must contact the WebView team so that they're prepared to upgrade your WebView to 11.2 once you have completed your migration. You'll send them an additional email, hey, I'm completed, and they'll go ahead and activate you to 11.2 WebView, okay? Bob, do you have anything to add up to here? I sometimes just continue talking, but Bob has been, yeah, Bob's been just a tremendous resource for everybody, including myself. You know, He's been around quite a while. Go ahead, Bob.
I'll just put the sales pitch in that you don't have to do with WebView if you go to the UpDocs portal. So that's about the only thing. That's the only plug I'll put in there.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
I'll also add in this link that you're seeing review practice partner documentation. When you get the slide, we've embedded the link right into that 11.2 documentation. So you should be able to just click on this link once you get the slide, and it'll go right to the page that Dave is talking about to be able to look at all of the different documentation we have in there.
Yep. Thanks for that, Susie. So, once again, normal routine stuff, you want to make sure you validate all the information and check your database. You want to run these reports. You want to make sure your refill requests are processed. You want to make sure you're up to date on all patches. We're going to ask you when you start the migration process, and hopefully you're all honest and you'll have everything done and not just clicking, yeah, I did that. We had one site that did do that, and they were missing patches. And, we had to back out and do it all over again, right? So if you're prescribing right now, you are active with the clearinghouse, or even if you're submitting claims with billing, you're active. So you must be activated. I think if you're just, maybe a new site or something, you would need to do that, okay? So just pay attention to the steps. Complete the prescription. Verify all notes with medications prescribed are completed and signed. So that is if you're using the .rx in the templates, you want to make sure that this is done, okay, and cleared out because there'll be a different view of the information if you haven't done all this. Let's see. You need to have an administrator available at the end of the migration, because there's going to be some decision and setup stuff that needs to be done, which Susie will be going through. Okay, so next slide, 15. Once again, after your successful upgrade, you're going to be doing these tasks. Once again, at the bottom, WebView's got to be notified, hey, we're 11.2 live now. And they will do what they have to do on their side to enable WebView 11.2 in order for it to communicate. Upgrade administrative tasks. Make sure all the users are logged out. These are all common sense things, but that second point that's highlighted, you want to be able to have a cold backup system restore. For those that have VMs, this will be a lot easier than if you have the old physical machines, okay? But you need to find a way to restore the machine. If, just like if you had a disaster at the site, you want to be able to restore your system. So that's the type of restore that we're talking about. Like if your building burns down, right? That's the type of backup we're talking about. Let's see, backups, restart your server, right? This is all common sense stuff. The PMSI, some sites had a PMSI monitor service to help with maybe the services bloating. This was a long time ago. We used to push this out. We have done a lot of work on the services, and with 11.2, the application service is doing a lot less. So we're hoping that if you're having any issues with the services, quitting or dying, we don't have that many tickets out on that, but occasionally we'll run into groupings of people, maybe this one group of install that may be battling it for whatever reason. And this version will help you out also. So all the add-ons will be upgraded to 11.2. The patches do all that, okay? So don't think it's something different. just know that that will happen. You never uninstall 11.1 products before the new ones, okay? It'll just migrate it, drop in the correct, maybe it's a DLL or an EXE. So don't worry about it, it'll be taken care of. This bottom section is confusing sometimes. There are very few sites that fall into this bottom category. If you're a site that you have to wait for practice partner development to get you a new DLL for a interface that's custom, then that would be you. The majority of the people, there's literally just a handful. The majority of the people just disregard this, okay? It's not you. You'll be a part of the top part of this, where the interface, the upgrades, the patching will take care of it. All right. Oops. All right. Make sure you notify WebView at the end is the big deal. Next one. Okay, here we go. Oh, did somebody move that back? Don't know.
You're fine right where you're at. Go ahead and move to the next. All
right. So the utility is migrate to Enterprise RX. That's kind of a misnomer. It's actually preparing you to. It does all the patching. It moves the bucket you're looking at right now is 11.1, say. If you're up to 11.1, if you're still on 11.0, shame on you. You should be on 11.1 at the latest. But this migrate to Enterprise RX is what's going to kick off your patching, right? So here's some of the stuff we already talked about down at the bottom. I'm not going to repeat it. 20. Here's the screen once you launch it. You want to click on that top button, and then you're going to be asked to click on all those check boxes. See that last one? It says, I am up to date on my patches. Okay? Be honest about it and make sure you're prepped. Once again, Bob, Susie, and I will all tell you, we've all been involved in all the beta sites. If all the prep work is done, this really is smooth sailing, okay? Have not seen one failure on patching, apart from, at this point, maybe they didn't patch everything. They got to go back and patch everything on the 11.1 and then go forward. But once the patching kicks off, we haven't seen any failures at that point, okay? And there's this rollback option available, but once you're at the register to Enterprise, you won't have this ability any longer, right? So just know that at that point, that'll be the second part after the patches. That's when this will no longer be available to roll back. Okay, so you launch it. Here we go. Patches 49. You'll see 33. 30. So let me back up one.
Go back one.
Go forward one. I try to go forward one more. Okay.
This way?
So,
okay.
Yeah, you're good. So, at this time, you'll have 33 tables that'll be migrated. This will be the longest part of this. So we've seen, depending on the size, right, we've seen a C-Tree site spend about 2 hours on this, and we've seen up to, our largest site thus far in Oracle, I think we went 6 to 7 hours at this point, okay? Now, there are larger Oracle sites out there, right? But the majority of the people on this call, that's probably your target. So say you started it at 5 p.m. on a Friday night. You will certainly be done by the next morning. You should be, right? But somebody's got to check and make sure, the migration's progressing. And you haven't failed on one of your patches, right? There is, at the bottom of this slide, there is that maintenance engine log that will show you if there's errors. Errors are very obvious in it. There's a lot of lines, it'll look Greek to many, but it has some useful information. And you may have seen those in the past. You'll get it on screen, but if you miss it on screen, you'll get it again, okay? So it's important that those complete cleanly to go to the next step. So like I said, once that's done, you'll have to go in and go into the external systems. Everybody should know where that is now, right? It's in the, maintenance, setup, external systems, and there's activation, and then we'll go to the next slide. Once you edit that, down at the bottom, it says activate. And then once you activate, it'll fill the screen with information that says you're activated. You were found, you're activated to enterprise. Okay, this is the place of no return. Next slide. Now we're going to do the register with enterprise. What this does is it moves the prescribers, the practice, the prescribers, and the pharmacies up to enterprise. Okay. So this typically takes this typically takes an hour, except for the pharmacy and the custom pharmacies being uploaded. But at that point, you'll be able to work. But we'll take you through a few of these screens. You're going to have to match. On this slide, it shows you clicking next. Then you do the matching. You click the matching button and you go to this, and here's the practice. Then you go next and you get this screen. This screen has on the left what SureScripts has, and on the right screen what you have internally. It's amazing. I mean, I've heard several people say, "Oh yeah, we know it's been wrong for a long time." It's like, okay, we got to fix it. Just do your homework ahead of time, okay? Because we need things to be right. All right, let's go next. And now we're doing the transfer properties. Once that's done, you're going to be going to the prescribers who needs to upgrade next, or not upgrade, but migrate. Mm-hmm. And then it shows you the statistics. So you may have some of the older practice partner sites had, because of the use back in the olden days, had operators as providers. And they don't have SPIs, but so you may have 20 prescribers found and only, 4 or 5 that needs migrating, like this screen shows 9 and only 4. So you may, so don't lose heart or don't panic, but that's the reasoning. So it's going to migrate the providers with the SPIs, okay? Next screen. So I did say, I'm sorry, on the bottom of the previous slide at the top, it did say some of the failure points. There may be a problem with the DEA number or, SPIs or something like that, okay? So once again, we're giving you tools to check ahead of time, and you're going to get tired of hearing that. But you do the homework ahead of time, get your site. I mean, we've got some sites that have over 100 providers, right? And they're starting to do their homework now, right, to get in line with this, right? We have multiple sites like that. Okay, so you just want to do your due diligence and do your homework, okay? And then we do this migrate, and we see the 4 that needed to go, migrate it, okay? All right, next. Then pharmacies are going to migrate, right? And it'll tell you how many custom you have. The lowest I saw thus far was 7 custom. The most I've seen was, I don't know, maybe 30. But in the pharmacies that moved up, the lowest I've seen was 500 in the one that had 7 custom. And the maximum I've seen was, what did we see, Bob? 22,000, I think. Wasn't that one of the early on ones?
Yeah, that was, it was in that that ballpark. Don't quote me on the number.
No, but I want to quote you. Okay, so once again, you're going to ask, well, how long is this going to take me? Well, it depends. It depends upon the speed going out of your system, and but our time frame, the largest site, that took 2 hours, I think, to migrate. So you can expect like a couple hours, but you're able to work at this time. Okay, at this time you're able to work. You're able to go on the product. Okay, next. Okay, so it says that it migrated. This is the end. And once you close this, you get this recap. Go ahead, Susie. So you get the recap on the right, okay? This data will be stored in the register with Enterprise RX log, okay? So it'll give us some useful information. If you're not looking at this, you may miss the fact that, yeah, you had 4 providers to migrate, but only 2 did. And sometimes you'll have 2 that go up. Say you have 10 providers. 2 will go up. The third one has a problem, and it suppresses the additional providers to move up until you fix the one ahead of it, okay? So we just rerun it and skip the other steps and go to the provider, fix whatever was wrong on the provider if you didn't do your homework, and then hopefully that will migrate after this, okay? Next one, I think that's the end, right? So now we have the admin task, and I hope I didn't speak too quickly. It isn't a big deal if you have everything staged correctly. And the staging is the practice address, provider SPI, and 1 SPI per practice if the provider is working out of multiple practices. I know we have one site that each maybe 80 providers, I think the number was, work out of 5 different practices. So they'll need 5 separate SPIs. You know, they'll register with Enterprise with the main SPI on their main practice, and then once they're in Enterprise, then they can quickly apply for the additional 4 SPIs, right? So it's not a big deal. You just need to know, if you want to be successful on the migration and not pull your hair out like I have, and now I'm bald, you want to be able to, be stage and do your homework. Okay, with that, I hope it was useful. Susie, it is all yours. Bob, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. And I will add that all the documentation we've had on this slide, we have in the installation guide and upgrade guide. So the steps are listed in there. The checklist is listed on all that information as well. So you have access to all that information that we've gone through today, and to be able to go back and utilize it as it comes on. So after the migration and installation is done, you'll need we say you need an admin available. One part of it is the admin. When you get to that reconciliation portion of the migration, what is needed there, why we say admin, is that it's going to be somebody who maybe is registered providers up to SureScripts in the past, so they understand what they have in Partner versus what they have up into the SureScript module. Keep in mind that if the information is wrong and it's asking you to validate, you have to validate to what's in SureScripts. So in one site we had the wrong address and everything on the SureScript side that never got updated. And then in Partner side, they had the updated information. In order to get past that migration, we have to validate or reconcile the data to SureScripts. So basically what we do is we take whatever's in SureScripts and through that validation window, you move it over into the window for Practice Partner, and it updates it so that you can move on to the next step. So just make sure that that's in mind. So that's why we're stressing is to make sure you know what you have set up in the SureScript enrollment site now with your providers and prior to the migration. This way then when you go to do that reconciliation, if everything is set up and as should it be, you won't have to run into that roadblock there to be able to change that.
So then one question might be, well, then I'm going to have a wrong address when if I use SureScripts. Don't worry about it. Once you migrate, you can correct it, and it will automatically update SureScripts. Okay, so rest your heart. We have taken all that into consideration, and it does work. We've done it at sites. Yeah. All yours.
Okay. That's good. Yeah. The good thing about going through beta, right, to be able to see all of that stuff. So the next steps after you get upgraded, and even when your pharmacies are still migrating, you can get into Partner and move around and get other things set up on that. It's not going to prevent you from getting in and moving around to it. There's some new access levels, and by default, the access levels will go ahead and should cross over into after the upgrade. So in the first one, we've got Enterprise RX. We have these others that the RX medication, all that's going to go through, and if it was set up in 11.1, it's going to go ahead and migrate into 11.2. And then this information under the RX modify and adjust, this is also going to be updated for you. By default, I've seen it checked, but I would always go and advise to check it anyway prior to you get all your users on using it so that you know that those access levels are set up. Because if it's not, then they may go in and try to work and they're not going to have the access levels. So this first step is going to be under the Records tab under Medications. So you want to go in and check that to make sure that your access levels of the people who need access to do their job is checked in this box and set up on it. I think by default, it's taking the canned, when I say the canned access levels, like the MD, the RN, that kind of stuff already, but you may have different type of access levels that you've set up along the way for other reasons, and that's where you'd really definitely want to check and make sure that those boxes are checked if they're needed for those people to go ahead and manage medications. The next one is going to be in the Records tab under the patient chart, ERX work list access. Again, most of the access levels, the MD and the nurse information will come over and have this checked, but you probably are going to need maybe on your high access or something like that. This way, it'll give you guys the ability as an admin to go in there and help them through as they come into it to be able to access the new RX work list information that pulls onto it. And then the pharmacy has just been changed, and it's just going to automatically change on there, is basically to do it that you can do new or delete pharmacies from this new pharmacy management window. Keep in mind, once you go to Enterprise, the whole pharmacy management is completely different. It's in Enterprise. It's all internet-based. And gone are the days of going in and creating a pharmacy and setting it up to go electronically, because all that is in the database from SureScripts, but you still have the ability to go in and edit and view that you'll be able to see information that pulls onto it as it comes through. So you'll just see changes on that. And it's not a big deal once you understand pharmacy management, because the new pharmacies are all going to be in there that you need. And then the last one is going to be the prescriber management, which Dave was kind of talking about. And I know on other lunch and learns, I've gone through prescriber management over and over again. And that will automatically, you want your high access to have this. So it'll go ahead and check on that. And the last lunch and learn, I don't go into too much here, but the last lunch and learn I did talk about is anybody who has the prescriber management access will also receive the RX denials inside of their inbox. So there was a workflow that was set up in the last lunch and learn, and if you can get that, if you don't have it, email me and I'll send it to you, that you can set up in your ppart.ini file that will only define those users who you want the RX denials to go into their inbox. And the denials would be they can't match up a patient information that pulls onto it. So that workflow has changed, but definitely your admin, you need to have access to this, because this is going to be the person who goes in and manages the IDP proofing, so that the EPCS and all that kind of information as well. But then there's going to be other, I guess, levels of prescribing management that comes on. So the next task in there is, again, with the change of enterprise, is that our past workflows, we had our nursing setup that would go ahead, or users that could go ahead and they could prescribe medications on behalf of the provider in a module. You might have it set up to go in and require a signature when they sent prescriptions. You might not have. It wasn't, you know, it was how Partner managed it. With e-prescribing enterprise, that whole mindset goes away. And what is placed with this is that users who will process medications, or prescriptions, I should say, for providers become prescribing agents, and providers become prescribers is the kind of language in there. So you're going to want to go into your provider list and edit each provider who's going to be sending out scripts and access this RX agents button right under the records tab. And then you're going to want to go ahead and basically add your prescribing agents to the prescriber, which would be each specific provider that you've edited there. And the prescribing agent, then what this does is give them the ability to go in and process prescriptions on the behalf of that provider. And when the prescription goes out to the SureScripts, it will document who that prescribing agent was inside of that prescription information that pulls in. And providers can be prescribing agents for other providers, because they're, again, in enterprise, that workflow that we knew of being able to forward on, maybe a prescription comes in to refill to one provider and it needs to go to another, that all ends up being processed in a different way through the work list. So you will want to have providers set up as prescribing agents for other providers so they can work through that information that pulls through, because this becomes an important role, being able to really manage enterprise in general, just with all that stuff that comes in and flows in through it. Once you've got all that set up, and you don't have, I mean, again, if I forget to set somebody up or something, you'll know soon enough when they go in to try to do it. But once you get through those processes as far as the admin, then basically you can just go into the medication window and click new, and your e-prescribing window is going to go ahead and open up. And once you know that, you know you've been able to launch it, and it's going to come up into this window. And so that would be the prescribing medication window is going to go ahead and populate. So right after all that, once you get through that, and it doesn't take very long to get it set up, but just make sure that you're preparing to do that once the install is done, so that you can be ready to go ahead and move on to the next step and users to use. Now, if you are like on the VAR side, or you're working with sites, you'd probably want an admin level there, and then be able to go on and furtherly train them at this point. Or if you're doing it as the IT side, then this way you would know that everything is set up and they're ready to move into it. Prescriber management is the next step that you'll want to go ahead and launch, and that basically the reason is that you just want to check and make sure all your providers moved over, which they should have, and then they're going to be associated with a practice. So it pulls from your Records 2 tab in the practice setup, and that information is going to come right into it. So your list of providers will be here. Under the ID proofing, basically, if they've already been ID proofed, and it's going to be grandfathered in, you won't even see anything in these windows, in this window right here. It's automatically there. They're ready to go ahead and start working. If they're, if they're just ID proof but they weren't EPCS prior to, then you would see an invite option in here of information to be able to do on it. If for some reason, basically they got scheduled for 2 different practices. In other words, if you've got multiple practices set up in Partner, and you have the same provider set up in multiple practices, this is what Dave was saying earlier, what we're going to keep on stressing, is that you can only have one SPI, SureScript provider ID, per a provider per a practice, meaning that if I've got that same SPI set up in multiple practices, I need to have those removed, and we have that utility that will check for that before, but once you get to this point, this is where you could go in, and if I've got, Dr. whoever set up, and I need an additional SPI, I could come into this window and click my invite button, register button right in here. It's going to show right here and there. You click on it, and basically at this point, then it's going to go out, and it's going to go back out to SureScripts and come back in and assign a SPI number there, which will then automatically populate back into your practice setup information for it. So most sites, you may not have to worry too much about this, but if you, again, like I said, is if you've got the same provider set for multiple practices with the same SPI, that's something that you will need to only have, you will have to do some prep work on that before that happens, because Enterprise won't let you have it like we had in the system prior to that. All right, so just as a reminder, the prescription templates go away. We don't have them anymore. So once we go to Enterprise, you don't have the access to templates. So if you had a lot of custom templates that were set up in there, you have to understand that, and those then can be made as favorites per user information that pulls on. So it's just a little bit of thought to think before you're moving into it, that to be able to utilize this. So we've been, like I said, we've been on Partner for a long time, and a lot of workflows have been created. And one was with your templates to be able to go in and set up, especially with different kind of medications, compound medications, that kind of stuff that were utilized. So if you need to go in and you want to look at this, you can print what you have in 11.0 if you need to go through that and review what's in there. They're not going to move into Enterprise, and once you get into that, then if you have that list on it, it would allow you to go in and work with your providers so they could set up their favorites to be able to utilize that as a favorite inside of the Enterprise. So it's just, if this is something you feel like you need to do, go ahead and do it in order to make it easier. If you were never using them and you always use the MedSpan, then it really wouldn't be necessary to do that. The new prescribed medication is the new drug search, and these are where your favorites come in. So basically, you can bring up medications and save it as a favorite. Keep in mind, though, me as an administrator, I can't sit down and set up Dr. A's favorites. Dr. A has to be set up and do his own favorites. So you can, as an administrator, you could help them do that information that pulls in. But if I am logged in as myself and I set up my own favorites, those are going to be specific to me as the user when I log into them. But they do categorize up in this alpha character numeric list up above. So as you add medications and favorites in there, then this allows you to break them down when you come into the window, and you can select a highlighted alphabet, and then that's going to narrow down and have my favorite information that pulls through. You can have a lot of favorites in there, and this is why this was created up above, is so that it sorts it out. Because with anything, I start getting really busy. The busier a window, the less I'm likely to look at information. So that's why with the favorites and in certain medications, you'll want to set up as favorites to be able to add into here. The drug search is a little different from the MedSpan. And so a lot of times it's when you're looking for the medication, it has not always been reported to be easy. And so this is something that, just like when we went to MedSpan, we had to get used to what we were looking at. So, it's there to be able to use on it, but I can say that most of the providers we work with so far seem to have kind of struggled a little bit with relearning that. But my suggestion is on those is that if it's something that I had trouble searching for, make it a favorite. And so then it's going to narrow down so that I can have my favorites in there to be able to use on it. All right. Also keep in mind that when we open up the prescription window, when you go into the medication window and click new to open this up, Enterprise is gathering all this data over on the left. So again, a lot of us have been on Partner for a long time. We might have huge problem lists with other problems, new problems, major problems, diagnosis codes, that kind of thing. So the first time when you open that into Enterprise, there may be, you may feel like you're, sitting there counting the dandelions popping up in the yard. It's not that slow, I'm just joking. But the reason is because it's starting to accumulate this information that pulls into it. So just know that this is pulling into the chart. You've got medications, problems, and so forth pulling into there as you open those windows up. Also, another thing that your prescription defaults have changed, and from what we used to have quite a bit of information in there, I would suggest prior to the migration just going in and checking your defaults, because I've ran across 2 or 3 sites already that had this defaulted to print. And what it really was caused is then once you get to Enterprise, kind of the idea is really to start migrating to a lot of electronic, was then you got in there and it was defaulted to print, and so they had to change it to the ERX. So this, I would advise, I guess, you may have some variables in there that people maybe print more than RX, but for the most part, if this is defaulted to the ERX, once they start using Enterprise, it's going to cut down on mistakes. because if I go in there and I'm not paying attention to it in our template, we used to could just drop that down and say transmit immediately and so forth. We still have the same option, but it's a different, method. And if it's defaulted to print, the chances of just hitting the send RX and out as print it goes. And obviously, I wanted to send it electronic. So that's just something to go ahead and check on that. And then you can see we've kind of, there's not a lot of extra requirements in here like there used to be, information that pulls through. So your migration, whatever you have set up in there when you migrate, is going to migrate over. But that was just something I found that made it a little bit easier. As I said, the pharmacy management, when you migrate, all that pharmacy management that Dave was talking about, it goes ahead and migrates. It brings over into my clinic tab pharmacies that I had set up as user entered by hand. So right now, if you go to 11.0 and you go into your pharmacy window and you go into that little click box that says show just user added, that's what will end up going into your clinic migration over to it. All of your patients will migrate with the updated pharmacies and match to what's in SureScripts. But with the clinic, those pharmacies may come in and, again, we had a pretty good site the other day that they only had like 8 of them that actually went into that. So once we moved to 11.0 and then we started having the SureScript download information that comes in, a lot of people just were getting their pharmacies there on an automatic basis, but you still may have stuff that's accumulated. From that window, if you can go in and remove them if you don't want them by just checking the little X box if they're not associated to any patient or anything like that on that. You could just remove them because at this point they may or may not be necessary. Your nicknames, if you were using nicknames, do not transfer over. That's what this little box is right here, this little edit box that you can go back in and add your nicknames to it, which by doing that will automatically transfer it from the SureScript directory into your clinic by nicknames. So there again, if you're heavily reliant on nicknames, that might be something, again, you might want to be aware of before you go into the migration so that you can go back and get that kind of set up to make it easier as well, that it goes on to it. But the pharmacy management is actually, we haven't had a lot of problems with it, information, and it seems to be much easier to manage than the old one was as far as that goes. And there again, now you've eliminated any of that downloading of the pharmacies or anything else. This is where I was telling you that your pharmacies will be listed that are already associated with the patient. It's going to come over for you already, listed into this window, into the pharmacies, and then it would be under the patient tab that you're seeing right in here, inside of your pharmacy management. So that windows have just changed. You can still view, same window we had before. Everything's grayed out. The only thing you can really change on that or update inside of the view window would possibly be a phone number or something like that. That may be, but other than that, it's all going to be fed in there through SureScripts. All right, getting down to the very end. As I said earlier, we have created some service tracks available that could be very helpful to you. If you're interested in these, go ahead and contact your account manager to request these services. The practice partner upgrade services would be, you would get a remote technical assistance on help getting it downloaded, migrated, and all that kind of stuff, as well as the remote application consulting and training, which basically we would take you through, helping you get making sure everything was set up, making sure you're ready to go before we even did the upgrade as far as patches and all that kind of stuff goes. And then once we get installed, then we would help you get through the administration task, as well as then have some time to go in and do some training. With that being said, we could probably, just kind of help you get ready to go to the migration and then post the migration. So once everybody gets updated and set into it, it could be extremely helpful in there. And so if you're interested in that, just contact your account manager, or you can shoot me an email too, and I can get it to the right person to be able to get a contract. We also have regulatory consulting, which we've had for a while, and that is, again, hours of training and basically just help you through the regulatory reporting through the whole year. There's hours of support, and because the things have changed this year, we have different reporting requirements for 2019, and it's not as huge as it used to be, but you still got your direct messaging and all that kind of stuff going along with the objectives. And then a lot of work with the CQM and helping that set up so that the vendor that you're using is able to capture the data that's needed for your CQM reporting and to keep you up to date, as well as kind of get you set up so that the following year like that, you're ready to keep on moving through it. So both of those are service tracks that we have available, and if you're interested, just reach out, and those are remote services, information that would be web-based, but just go ahead and let us know, and we can get service contracts ready for you whenever you're ready to get rolling. Our next Lunch and Learn is going to be April 17th, and I want to do a portal review of Docs. I did it a while back. We've had it, people are starting to upgrade onto it and that kind of stuff. So as always, we all learn as we go along, and new changes, that kind of stuff. So I like to keep everybody in the know about that information, as well as then the UpDocs. Moving from WebView to UpDocs will be another thing that's got to get done this year for 2019 for reporting purposes. So that's something that you need to have on your radar and your plate of when you want to do this to be able to get set up. Information that pulls on. And then on March 8th, I'm going to do some enterprise workflows, really a lot of things that we've learned through the beta test, and certain things that I can see, what we were used to and what's going to change and what we'll all kind of have to work through as they come on. Videos in the Engage are available at the Engage Learning site, and I have all of the workflows set up in there as far as Partner goes, and Enterprise, the different windows and how to use them, that kind of thing there. So that could be very beneficial for your end users to be able to go see those that don't really want to know about the admin side of stuff. They just want to go in and get their work done. So those are available. So any of that interested in, just go ahead and contact your account manager and get those set up. All right. We got a couple of minutes left for questions on this. I don't know if there's anything that needs to be reviewed, or as usual, I always have Cameron just print those out for me so I can go through them and send you an email. As long as you have a valid email there, I can respond back. But if we have any questions, we got a couple minutes.
We tried to get most of them while you were on.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it looks like we just got another question in, and the question is, are the training videos for end users free or for a fee?
The training videos in Engage are a fee, and you can get one license is $125 for the year. And when that says one license, I mean, you can, it means basically you just wouldn't have it loaded 2 times during the same session, or you can get 5 licenses. I'm not sure what the price of that is, information that your contract would be. So those on Engage are specific to the how-to type stuff. The practice partner videos are documented, are recorded and documented on the 11.2 documentation in the link that we have here. So those are out there, which you may already have, but the Engage license it does cost.
All right. Thank you, Susie, and thank you, everyone. I just real quick wanted to bring up something that Susie brought up at the beginning of the presentation, and that's user conference. There is early bird pricing through April 7th at conference.emds.com. That's conference.emds.com. And you can register through the 7th for early bird pricing. If I don't see any other questions, but if they are in our report, like Susie said, she'll get a list of those and she'll reach out to you as long as there's a valid email address attached to it. But otherwise, thank you, Susie, Bob, and Dave for a great presentation, and we look forward to staying connected with more Lunch and Learns in the future.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.